Natsuki Subaru. Is the main protagonist of Rei Zero Kara Hajimaru Isekai Saikatsu. He was a hikikomori that was transported to Lugnica through unknown means, and given the ability to return by death by Sadala. He officially became Amelia's knight and subsequently became a knight of the Dragon Kingdom of Lugnica, though he has no duties towards the kingdom as the title was only granted to him, so he could be given the right to officially become Amelia's knight, following the incident at the sanctuary, and is later revealed to have the necessary qualifications to become a sage candidate. Currently, Subaru is situated in the neighboring sacred empire of Wallachia, more precisely, in the demon city of Chaos Flame, with the former 77th Emperor Vincent Abelux, Al, Medium O'Connell, Terada and Louis Arnab, trying to prevent the 7th-ranking Divine General Liorina Mishigir to join the enemy's side. Upon delivering the letter to the Divine General and narrowly escaping the Red Lapis Castle after being attacked by Vincent's body doubles escorts the 3rd-ranking Divine General, Olbart Dunkelken, and a 2nd-class General Kafma Irolux. Subaru woke up within his own 10-year younger body, seemingly aging backwards 10 years overnight. Subaru is first seen at a local Japanese convenience store, buying consumer goods. After leaving the store, he somehow ends up in a fantasy world, after the atmosphere around him distorts itself. Confused by the happenings around him, Subaru later realizes that he has been sucked into another world. Back in his original world, Subaru was the only son to two odd but well-meaning parents, Kenichi and Naoko. From a young childhood age, Subaru idealized his dad in particular, a popular man in his community who was highly talented in whatever he did, a loving father who prioritized his family above everything else, and had a boisterous personality that charmed anyone he met. Kenichi was everything he wanted to be, and growing up around him had a huge influence on Subaru's life. Taking pride in being his son, Subaru worked to live up to the expectations that came with that in his mind. For a time, he achieved this, as Subaru found himself smarter, more physically able, and popular than his peers. When he received praise, Subaru would have heard how it was expected of him being Kenichi's son, which made him feel special and entitled to a sense of superiority. However, as the young boy's small world started to gradually expand upon entering middle school, Subaru would come face to face with limits of his own ability. Suddenly, he found people who were becoming smarter and faster than he was, and, in general, being better at the things he used to be. He felt as if he was slowly losing his place and began to harbor a deep sense of shame at letting down his parents, and fear of everyone, leaving him for failures. Doubt and self-loathing began to develop in his heart. But rather than prioritizing getting better at those things to combat his anxieties, Subaru instead placed more importance on doing daring and outrageous things to maintain his fragile dignity and keep himself the center of attention. However, the more reckless Subaru's actions became, the fewer people wanted to be around him. Yet Subaru continued to deceive himself and believe his own lies, because as the son of his seemingly indomitable father, he couldn't be seen as a failure. Eventually, one day, Subaru noticed he no longer had any friends, and in his loneliness, Subaru realized he wasn't anyone special. From then on, the comparisons between his father and himself turned into a curse that wounded and suffocated him everywhere he went, yet his strong admiration for his dad made it impossible to show that pain to anyone. Eventually, he stopped trying to stand out, and when high school came, he found himself in a new environment where no one knew his past. Seizing this opportunity, Subaru tried to build new interpersonal relationships, but he had no idea how to be himself around others, and instead only ended up emulating his father, his only frame of reference, which instead led to others to treat him as a clown, and classmates simply ignored his existence altogether. One day, Subaru skipped a day of school out of lack of enthusiasm, which slowly turned into a constant thing, until at one point, he hadn't been to class for 3 months. When out of public spaces, Subaru felt liberated, but more than that, his own degradation meant people would start distancing him from Kenichi, and in a twisted sense of hope, his parents come to acknowledge him as worthless and cast him aside in self-abandonment. After being summoned to a new world, he saw this as a chance to make a fresh start. However, he didn't change as a person. He decided that he would save Amelia, and eventually, he was exposed for what he was, a person forcing their feelings on someone else, and that his white knighting doesn't work out in the real world. He thought of himself as the hero of his own story, but was faced with reality when he didn't have the overpowered abilities of a usual protagonist. He however chose to ignore that he wasn't the hero, and that the world would go on, with or without, and tried to force his way into Amelia's affairs, and in the process, making a complete fool of himself. The world then proceeded to show him how weak he was, and that he couldn't save anyone. After being utterly broken, he wanted to run away, but was however stopped by Rem. This became the turning point for his character. He truly made an effort to change himself rather than expect that as the supposed protagonist, everything would work out, which it didn't before, as he had to watch the results of his failures and see the people he cared for die over and over again. Eventually, after hitting his breaking point and coming to terms with his inner conflicts with some encouraging words from Rem, Subaru began reflect on his actions and take step to amend his broken relationships, ultimately learned to be better considerate of Amelia's feelings, rather than just forcing his in expectation that she would reward him. Subaru indeed became a changed character, and he also now tries to live up to the expectations of a hero that Rem had for him. According to the author, after Subaru went missing was transported to the kingdom of Lugnica, a police investigation was launched, but ended up empty-handed.